Captain Lisa Grant pressed her face against the cold glass window of the space station. Outside in the black space, she could see them coming. The alien ships looked like giant metal sharks swimming through the darkness. Each one was 3 times bigger than any human ship she had ever seen. Lisa had been a soldier for 15 years. She had fought in wars on distant planets and seen things that would give most people nightmares. But she had never seen anything like this. The Carathian Empire was here, and they wanted Earth to surrender. The communication room behind her was filled with worried voices. Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the center of it all, his gray hair messy from running his hands through it. Had been awake for 3 days straight, ever since the aliens sent their message. "They want an answer in 6 hours," said Commander Pete Collins. His face on the video screen looked tired and scared. Pete was calling from Mars Colony, one of humanity's biggest settlements outside Earth. "My people are talking about running. Where can we run to? These aliens own half the galaxy." Lisa turned away from the window. She walked over to where the other officers were talking. On the big table in the middle of the room, a hologram showed the alien fleet. 47 ships, all of them armed with weapons that could destroy a planet. "What exactly did they say?" asked Commander Amy Rodriguez. She was young for a commander, only 32, but she was smart. Her colony on Europa had the best defenses in the solar system, but even she looked worried. Admiral Morrison touched a button on the table. The room filled with a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. It was speaking English, but the words came out wrong, like the speaker had too many teeth. "Humans of the weak Earth system, you have built colonies on worlds that belong to the Carathian Empire. You will remove all your people from these worlds in 30 days. You will also give us your homeworld called Earth. If you do not agree, we will destroy all your colonies and your Earth. This is not a request. This is a command." The message ended. The room was quiet for a long moment. 30 days, said Pete Collins from the Mars screen. "How are we supposed to move 20 million colonists in 30 days? And where would we put them?" "They don't care where we go," said Amy Rodriguez. "They just want us gone." Lisa had heard enough. She stepped forward. "Admiral, what about their laws? Don't they have rules about war?" Morrison looked at her. His eyes were red from no sleep. "They do, Grant, but their rules aren't like ours. They believe the strong should rule the weak. They think we're weak, because our ships are smaller and our weapons are not as powerful. But they have one law that might help us," said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Helen Baker. She was not a soldier, but a scientist who studied alien cultures. She had been working with the diplomatic team for the past 3 days. "Tell us," said Morrison. Dr. Baker walked to the table and pulled up new information on the hologram. "The Carathians have something called the right of challenge. If a smaller group is about to be destroyed, they can ask for single combat. One fighter against one of theirs. Winner takes everything." Pete Collins laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Single combat? Have you seen what these things look like? The reports from the other systems say they're 8 feet tall with natural armor. They have 4 arms and can lift a car over their heads." "The Vegan colony tried it last month," said Dr. Baker quietly. "Their best fighter lasted 43 seconds. Lisa felt something cold in her stomach. She had seen the reports from Vega. The colony had been completely destroyed after their champion lost. Every man, woman, and child killed. 3 million. People gone in one day. "So we don't have a choice," said Amy Rodriguez. "We surrender or we all die." "There might be another option," said Morrison. He looked older than his 60 years. "Earth Command has been working on something. A new weapon, but it won't be ready for 6 months. "We don't have 6 months," said Pete Collins. "We have 6 hours to give them an answer." Lisa had been quiet, but now she spoke up. "What if we challenge them?" Everyone looked at her. Dr. Baker shook her head. "Lisa, you saw what happened to the vegan fighter. These aren't human opponents, they're built for war." "So are we," said Lisa. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We're still here." Morrison studied her face. Grant, you're talking about going up against something that has never lost a challenge fight. Ever. In 300 years of Carathian expansion, no one has ever beaten one of their champions. Then maybe it's time someone did. The room was quiet again. Lisa could hear the hum of the space station's engines and the quiet beeping of computers. Outside the window, the alien ships were getting closer. Even if you could somehow win, said Pete Collins, what makes you think they would honor the agreement? These are the same aliens who destroy entire colonies. Dr. Baker answered that question. Actually, they would honor it. The right of challenge is sacred to them. It's part of their religion. If we win, they have to leave us alone and recognize our right to our territory. And if we lose? Asked Amy Rodriguez. Then we all die anyway, said Morrison. At least this way we die fighting, instead of running. Lisa stepped closer to the table. Admiral, I want to volunteer. Morrison looked at her for a long time. Lisa Grant was not a big woman. She was 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed about 130 pounds. Next to a Carathian warrior, she would look like a child. But Morrison had seen her fight. He had seen her lead troops through impossible battles and come out alive. He had seen her take on 5 enemy soldiers at once and win. Lisa Grant was small, but she was also the most dangerous person he had ever met. Lisa, this isn't like fighting humans. These things are stronger, faster, and bigger than anything you've ever faced. Then I'll have to be smarter, she said simply. Commander, Rodriguez leaned forward. Grant, even if you're willing to die for this, what about the rest of us? If you lose, every human in the colonies dies. That's a lot of responsibility. Lisa looked around the room at all the worried faces. These were good people, brave people who had spent their lives protecting humanity's expansion into space. They had families back on Earth and in the colonies. They had children who deserved a future. I know what's at stake, Lisa said. But what's the alternative? We run and hide somewhere? We spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders? These aliens won't stop with our colonies. Eventually, they'll come for Earth too. Morrison touched another button on the table. A new image appeared in the hologram. It showed Earth, blue and green and beautiful, floating in space. 24 billion people, he said quietly. That's how many humans are counting on us to make the right choice. Lisa looked at the image of Earth. She thought about her sister Jenny, who lived in New York with her 2 kids. She thought about her parents' farm in Ohio, where she had learned to fight by wrestling with her older brother Dan. She thought about all the people who would never know that their lives had been decided in this room. Admiral, she said, send the message. Tell them we accept their challenge. Morrison nodded slowly. He looked tired, but also proud. Grant, you know this is probably suicide. Lisa smiled for the first time in 3 days. Admiral, with respect, everything we do out here is probably suicide. The difference is this time we get to choose how we die. As Morrison began preparing the message to send to the Carathian fleet, Lisa walked back to the window. The alien ships were close enough now that she could see details on their hulls. In 12 hours, she would be fighting for the survival of the human race. She pressed her hand against the glass and whispered a promise to the stars beyond. I won't let them down. The Carathian flagship was bigger than any building Lisa had ever seen. As her small transport ship flew toward it, she could see rows of weapons pointing out from its hull like teeth. The ship was dark red and black, and it moved through space, like a living thing. Lisa sat in the passenger seat wearing her combat gear. The uniform was light gray and made from materials that could stop bullets and knives. On her belt were her combat knife, emergency medical supplies, and some small explosive charges meant for opening locked doors. Looking at her gear now, it all seemed very small and useless. Transport ship Mercy requesting permission to dock, said the pilot. His name was Captain Tony Barnes, and he had volunteered to fly Lisa to the alien ship. His hands were shaking as he held the controls. The answer came back in that same grinding metal voice they had heard before. Permission granted. Dock at port 17. The human fighter will come alone. Lisa looked out the window at the docking port they were heading toward. It was huge, big enough for ships 10 times larger than theirs. Around the opening, she could see alien soldiers standing guard. They were exactly as the reports had described them. 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like natural armor plating, with 4 arms instead of 2. "Lisa," said Captain Barnes, quietly. "You can still change your mind. We could turn around right now." "No," she said. "Too many people are counting on this." The docking process took 10 minutes. When they were locked into place, Lisa heard the sound of air being pumped into the connection tunnel. The aliens were making sure she could breathe when she crossed over to their ship. Lisa stood up and checked her gear one more time. Everything was in place. She had practiced with these weapons and tools for 15 years. They were part of her. "Now tell Admiral Morrison that I'll do my best," she said to Captain Barnes. "I will. And Lisa, for what it's worth, I think you can do this." Lisa walked to the airlock door. It opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it was a tunnel that led to the alien ship. The walls were made of the same dark red material as the ship's hull. Strange symbols were carved into the metal, and they seemed to glow with their own light. As she walked through the tunnel, Lisa could hear sounds from inside the alien ship. There were voices, but they didn't sound like human voices. They were deeper, rougher, like rocks being ground together. There were also other sounds, mechanical noises that she couldn't identify. The tunnel ended at another door. This one was massive, at least 12 feet tall and 6 feet wide. As Lisa approached it, the door opened automatically. Beyond it was the alien ship. The first thing that hit her was the smell. It was like metal and oil, but also something else, something organic that made her think of reptiles. The air was warm and humid, more like a jungle than a spaceship. 2 Karathian soldiers were waiting for her. Up close, they were even more frightening than she had expected. Their skin looked like it was made of overlapping plates, dark green and brown. Their faces were long and narrow, with small eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. Each of them had 4 arms, and she could see that their hands ended in claws instead of fingers. "You are the human champion," said one of them. Its voice was deep and sounded like it was coming from inside a cave. "I am Captain Lisa Grant of the Earth Defense Force," she said. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "I am War. Leader Kethmore. I will escort you to the arena. You should know that in 300 years no challenger has ever defeated a Karathian champion." "There's a first time for everything," Lisa said. They walked through corridors that were much larger than anything on a human ship. The ceilings were at least 10 feet high, and the hallways were wide enough for 6 people to walk side by side. The walls were covered with more of those glowing symbols, and Lisa realized they must be some kind of writing. As they walked, they passed other aliens. Some were soldiers like her escorts, but others looked different. Some were smaller, with only 2 arms. Others were even bigger than the soldiers, with thick armor covering their entire bodies. All of them stopped to stare at Lisa as she walked by. "Your species is very small," said War Leader Kethmore. "How did you manage to build spaceships and weapons?" "We use our brains more than our muscles," Lisa said. "Brains do not help in combat. Only strength and speed matter when you fight for your life." They turned a corner and entered a much larger area. Lisa looked up and saw that they were now in a huge open space inside the ship. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. All around the walls were rows of seats, thousands of them, and they were filling up with alien spectators. In the center of the space was a circular area about 100 feet across. The floor was made of some kind of dark stone, and it was stained with what Lisa realized was probably blood from previous fights. "The arena," said Kethmore. "This is where you will die." Lisa looked around at all the aliens taking their seats. There had to be at least 10,000 of them, maybe more. They were all talking in their grinding voices, and she could tell they were excited. This was entertainment for them. "Where is your champion?" she asked. Kethmore pointed toward the opposite side of the arena. "He will enter soon, but first, you must understand the rules." Another alien approached them. This one was different from the others. It was taller and thinner, and instead of armor plating, its skin looked smooth and almost metallic. It wore robes covered in more of those glowing symbols. I am High Priest Zexkar, it said. I will explain the sacred rules of challenge combat. Lisa listened carefully as the priest spoke. The rules were simple but harsh. Both fighters would enter the arena unarmed, except for what they brought with them. The fight would continue until one fighter was dead or unable to continue. If Lisa was defeated, humanity would be destroyed. If she won, the Carathian fleet would leave human space forever. There is one other rule, said the priest. If you are knocked down and cannot continue fighting, you have 1 full hour to recover. If you can stand and fight again within that time, the combat continues. This is an ancient law, meant to separate the truly defeated from those who still have the will to fight. 1 hour, Lisa repeated. That was something she hadn't known about. Yes, but do not think this will help you. Our champion, Vextar the Undefeated, has never needed more than a few minutes to finish his opponents. At that moment, a loud sound filled the arena. It was like a horn, but deeper and more musical. The crowd of aliens grew quiet. He comes, said Kethmore. A door opened on the far side of the arena and Vextar walked out. Lisa had thought she was prepared for how big he would be, but seeing him in person was different. He was at least 8.5 feet tall, maybe 9 feet. His body was covered in natural armor that looked like it had been polished to a mirror shine. His forearms were each as thick as Lisa's waist, and when he moved, she could see the muscles beneath his armored skin, but it was his face that made Lisa's blood run cold. It was long and narrow like the other aliens, but his eyes were different. They were larger and they glowed with an intelligence that was both alien and completely evil. When he looked at her across the arena, his mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. The crowd began to cheer. The sound was deafening, like standing next to a waterfall. Vextar raised all 4 of his arms above his head, and the cheering got even louder. Vexitar has killed 47 challengers, said the priest. Warriors from 17 different species. Some were larger than humans. Some were faster. Some had natural weapons like claws or poison. All of them are dead. Lisa stepped down into the arena. The stone floor felt solid under her feet, but she noticed it had a slight texture to it, probably to keep fighters from slipping in blood. As she walked toward the center of the arena, Vextar began moving toward her. Even his walk was frightening. He moved like a predator, smooth and controlled, but with obvious power behind every step. They met in the center of the arena. Up close, Vextar was even more terrifying. Lisa had to crane her neck back just to look at his face. His breath smelled like meat and metal. So small, he said in perfect English. Are you certain you are a warrior? You look more like a human child. I'm certain, Lisa said. Vextar laughed, and the sound echoed around the arena. I will try to make this quick, little human. There is no honor in torturing such a weak opponent. The priest raised a staff covered in glowing symbols. Let the sacred combat begin. Lisa had maybe 3 seconds to think before Vextar moved. He was fast, much faster than something that big should have been able to move. His lower right arm swung toward her in a backhanded blow that would have taken her head off if it had connected. She ducked under the swing and tried to move to his left side, but his upper left arm was already coming down toward her. Lisa rolled forward between his legs and came up behind him. But Vextar was already turning. His lower left arm caught her in the chest with a blow that lifted her completely off the ground. Lisa felt her ribs crack as she flew backward through the air. She hit the arena wall hard enough to leave a dent in the stone. Pain exploded through her entire body as she collapsed to the ground. The crowd was cheering even louder now. Lisa tried to breathe, but every breath sent sharp pain through her chest. She could taste blood in her mouth. Lisa crawled to the edge of the arena wall and used it to pull herself into a sitting position. Every movement sent sharp pain through her ribs and shoulder. She could feel warm blood running down her chin from where she had bitten her tongue. During the impact, Vextar was still celebrating in the center of the arena. He walked in a wide circle with all 4 arms raised high, showing off for the thousands of alien spectators. The crowd was making those grinding metal sounds that she now understood was their version of cheering. Lisa wiped the blood from her mouth and forced herself to focus. She had 57 minutes left. In her 15 years as a soldier, she had learned that the most important skill in combat was not strength or speed. It was the ability to think clearly when everything was going wrong. She watched Vextar carefully as he moved around the arena. The alien champion was huge and powerful, but Lisa began to notice things that might be important. When he switched, from using his upper arms to his lower arms, there was a tiny pause, maybe half a second while his brain coordinated the movement. His armor plates overlapped, but there were small gaps at the joints where they had to bend. Most importantly, he was arrogant. Vextar truly believed the fight was over. He had knocked her down with one blow, just like he had done to 47 other challengers. In his mind, he was just waiting for the hour to pass so he could officially claim victory. Lisa's communicator made a soft, beeping sound. She touched the small device hidden in her collar. "Lisa, are you alive?" It was Commander Amy Rodriguez calling from the human fleet. "I'm alive," Lisa whispered, trying not to let the aliens hear her. "But barely. Your medical readings are bad. You have at least 3 broken ribs and a dislocated shoulder. You need medical attention now. I have 56 minutes to figure this out," Lisa said quietly. "Lisa, listen to me," said Admiral Morrison's voice through the communicator. "You've done enough. You volunteered to fight an impossible fight, and no one can blame you for losing to that thing. We can surrender with honor." "No." The word came out harder than Lisa had intended. 24 billion people, Admiral. I'm not giving up on them." She clicked off the communicator and continued studying Vexitar. The alien champion had stopped celebrating and was now looking at her with what might have been curiosity. "You are still conscious, little human," he called across the arena. "Most challengers lose consciousness after the first blow. Perhaps you are slightly more durable than you appear." Lisa didn't answer. She was thinking about everything she knew about alien biology from the intelligence reports. The Carathians had evolved on a world with heavy gravity, which explained their thick armor and powerful muscles. But heavy gravity also meant they were not used to quick changes in direction. Their movements were powerful, but predictable. She thought about the weapons on her belt. Her combat knife would never penetrate that armor. The emergency medical supplies were useless in a fight. But the small explosive charges might be helpful in ways she hadn't considered before. Lisa began testing her injuries. Her left arm was definitely dislocated at the shoulder, but she had dealt with that injury before. She positioned herself against the wall and pushed hard, forcing her shoulder joint back into place. The pain was incredible, but her arm started working again. Her ribs were cracked but not completely broken. She could still move and breathe, though it hurt. More importantly, she could still fight if she was smart about it. Vextar noticed her moving around and walked closer. "Are you planning to stand up and continue fighting? That would be entertaining, but also very stupid." "Maybe," Lisa said. She slowly pushed herself to her feet, using the wall for support. Standing up made her dizzy, but she forced herself to stay upright. The crowd grew quieter. They had expected the human to stay down until the hour was up, then surrender. Seeing her stand was not part of their usual entertainment. "Tell me something," Lisa said to Vextar as she took a careful step away from the wall. "In 300 years of these fights, has anyone ever lasted the full hour?" Vextar tilted his head like he was thinking. "2 have tried. A Zentaran warrior lasted 37 minutes before I killed him. A Hive Queen from the Outer Rim lasted 41 minutes. Both were much larger and stronger than you, but neither of them was human," Lisa said. She began walking slowly around the edge of the arena. Her legs were shaky, but they were getting stronger with each step. Vextar turned to follow her movement, but he didn't seem worried. "What makes humans special?" he asked. "You are small, weak, and slow. Your skin is soft and tears easily. You have only 2 arms instead of 4. I do not understand how your species survived long enough to build spaceships." Lisa continued walking in a circle around the arena's edge. "We survived because we learned to think differently than other species. Most animals fight with tooth and claw. Humans learned to fight with our minds. Minds do not matter when bones, are breaking, Vextar said. Don't they? Lisa stopped walking and faced him directly. Let me ask you something else. In all those fights you won, did any of your opponents ever really study you? Did they watch how you move, how you think, how you make mistakes? For the first time, Vextar looked slightly less confident. I do not make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, Lisa said. I've been watching you for the past 10 minutes. You have at least 3 habits that could get you killed if someone knew about them. This was not entirely true. Lisa had only identified one clear pattern in his movement. But she wanted to make him think about his own fighting style instead of just relying on his natural advantages. Vextar's forearms moved restlessly. What habits? I'm not going to tell you that, Lisa said with a small smile. Where would be the fun in that? She started moving again, but this time she was walking toward the center of the arena instead of staying near the wall. The crowd began making noise again, but it sounded different now, less certain. You are bluffing, Vexatar said, but he sounded like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. Maybe I am, Lisa said. Or maybe I'm the first opponent you've ever faced who spent time learning instead of just trying to hit you harder. She reached into her belt and pulled out her combat knife. It was a good blade, 7 inches long and sharp enough to cut through most materials. Against Vextar's armor, it would be almost useless. But it was still a weapon, and holding it made her feel more like a soldier. Vextar laughed when he saw the knife. That little blade? You cannot cut through Carathian armor with such a tiny weapon. Armor has joints, Lisa said simply. Everything has weak points if you know where to look. She began moving faster now, not walking but jogging in a wide circle, around the alien champion. Vextar turned to keep her in sight, but Lisa could see that the constant turning was making him slightly dizzy. Stand still and fight like a warrior, he called. Why? Lisa asked, still moving. Because it would be easier for you? The truth was that Lisa was buying time while her body recovered from the initial injury. The medical training she had received in the military included techniques for fighting through pain and injury. Her ribs still hurt, but the sharp pain was fading to a dull ache. Her shoulder was working properly again. More importantly, she was starting to understand the arena itself. The floor was not perfectly flat. There were slight rises and dips, probably worn into the stone by 300 years of combat. The lighting came from panels in the ceiling, but they created shadows near the walls that could be useful. Lisa also noticed something else. Along the walls of the arena were small openings, probably drains for cleaning up after fights. Some of them were large enough that she could put her hand inside. That gave her an idea. 42 minutes remaining, announced the high priest from somewhere above the arena. Lisa stopped moving and faced Vextar directly. You know what I think? I think you're getting nervous. Nervous? Vextar's forearms spread wide in a gesture of disbelief. I am the greatest warrior in the Carathian Empire. I have killed challengers from 17 different species. I do not get nervous fighting a small human female. Then why haven't you attacked me again? Lisa asked. I've been walking around this arena for 15 minutes, practically defenseless, and you haven't tried to finish me off. A confident warrior would have ended this by now. Vextar's eyes narrowed. Lisa could see that her words were having an effect. The alien champion was used to opponents who either cowered in fear or charged at him in desperate fury. He didn't know how to deal with someone who was analyzing him like a puzzle to be solved. You want me to attack? He said. I want you to try, Lisa replied. Vextar moved toward her, but not with the explosive speed he had shown earlier. This time he approached more carefully, trying to keep track of everything she was doing. Lisa waited until he was about 10 feet away, then suddenly sprinted toward the arena wall. But instead of running away from him, she ran up the wall itself, using her momentum to take 3 steps on the vertical surface before gravity pulled her down. The move surprised Vextar enough that he paused for a moment. In that moment, Lisa landed behind him and to his left side, exactly where she wanted to be. She slashed with her knife at the joint where his lower left arm connected to his torso. The blade didn't penetrate the armor, but it scratched the surface and left a thin line of metal shavings. Vextar stared at the scratch on his armor for a long moment. In 300 years of fighting, no one had ever managed to mark him. The thin line of scraped metal seemed to glow under the arena lights. "You got lucky," he said, but his voice sounded different now, less confident. "Luck has nothing to do with it," Lisa replied. She was breathing hard, but she felt stronger than she had since the fight began. That was planning. Vextar's forearms began moving in slow circles like he was warming up for something serious. "Then let me show you what happens when planning meets real power." He charged at her again, but this time all four arms were working together. Lisa had expected this. She pulled one of the small explosive charges from her belt and threw it at the arena floor between them. The explosion was small, meant for opening doors, not hurting people, but it filled the air with dust and smoke, making it hard to see. In the confusion, Lisa rolled to her left and came up near one of the drainage holes she had noticed earlier. Vextar burst through the smoke, swinging all four arms wildly. But Lisa wasn't where he expected her to be. She was crouched low, and as he passed over her, she slashed upward with her knife at the back of his knee joint. This time the blade found a gap in the armor. It only went in about an inch, but it was enough to draw real blood. Vextar roared in pain and anger, spinning around to grab her. But Lisa was already moving again. She dropped her knife and grabbed something from the drainage hole. It was a piece of broken metal, probably left over from some previous fight. The metal was sharp on one end and about the size of her hand. Vextar's lower arm swept toward her, trying to grab her legs. Lisa jumped up, using his own arm as a stepping stone, and landed on his back. Before he could shake her off, she drove. The metal shard into the joint where his neck met his shoulder. The alien champion bucked like an angry horse, trying to throw her off. His upper arms reached back, trying to grab her, but Lisa was too close to his body for him to get a good grip. She held on with one arm and kept stabbing with the metal shard, looking for gaps in his armor. Finally, Vextar managed to reach back, far enough to grab her leg. He pulled her off his back and threw her across the arena. Lisa hit the ground hard and rolled several times before coming to a stop. But when she stood up, she was smiling. Vextar had cuts on his neck and shoulder. Now in the back of his left knee was bleeding. More importantly, he was favoring that leg, which meant the cut was deeper than it looked. 28 minutes remaining, announced the high priest. The crowd was completely silent now. This was not the entertainment they had expected. Their greatest champion was injured and bleeding, while the small human was still fighting. Vextar limped toward her, his movement noticeably slower than before. "You fight like a coward, hiding and running instead of meeting me directly." "I fight like a human," Lisa said. "We don't win by being stronger. We win by being smarter." She picked up her knife from where she had dropped it. The blade was now stained with alien blood. She also grabbed another piece of metal from the arena floor, a chunk of debris from her explosive charge. Vextar was angry now, really angry. His eyes glowed brighter, and he was breathing hard through his sharp teeth. "I will tear you apart with my bare hands." "You can try," Lisa said, "but you'll have to catch me first." What happened next was not really a fight in the traditional sense. It was more like a deadly game of tag. Lisa used every trick she had learned in 15 years of combat, plus a few new ones she invented on the spot. She used the drainage holes to store extra weapons. She used the uneven floor to make Vextar stumble. She used the shadows near the walls to disappear and reappear where he didn't expect her. And every time she got close enough, she found another gap in his armor and left another cut. Vextar was getting frustrated. He was used to quick, brutal fights where his strength and size won the day. This slow, careful combat was wearing him down both physically and mentally. "Stand still and fight me properly," he demanded after Lisa slipped away from another grab. Attempt. "Why would I do that?" Lisa asked from across the arena. "You're bigger and stronger than me. Fighting you properly would be stupid." She had noticed something else about Vextar. When he got angry, he got sloppy. His attacks became more powerful but less accurate. His forearms stopped working together as well. Lisa decided to make him even angrier. "You know what I think?" she called out, as she dodged another charge. "I think all those other challengers were fighting you wrong. They were trying to beat you at your own game instead of playing a different game entirely." Vexitar stopped chasing her and stood in the center of the arena, breathing heavily. Green. Blood was dripping from at least 6 different cuts on his body. His armor was scratched and dented. For the first time in his life, he looked vulnerable. "What are you saying?" he asked. "I'm saying that humans have been fighting creatures bigger and stronger than us for thousands of years," Lisa replied. "We didn't survive by being tough. We survived by being clever." She began walking in a circle around him again, just outside the reach of his arms. "You want to know how humans hunted animals 10 times our size? We didn't charge at them with spears. We dug pits and covered them with leaves. We used poison arrows. We attacked in groups and ran away when they fought back. We made them exhaust themselves chasing us until they were too tired to fight anymore." Vextar turned to follow her movement, but Lisa could see that his injured leg was making it hard for him to pivot quickly. "You are saying I am like a dumb animal?" he asked, his voice dangerous. "I'm saying you're fighting like one," Lisa said. "All muscle, no strategy, just charging at your opponent and hoping your strength is enough." This made Vexitar furious. He roared and charged at her again, all 4 arms reaching out to grab her. But his anger made him predictable, and Lisa was ready. As he reached for her, she dropped to the ground and rolled between his legs again. But this time, instead of coming up behind him, she stayed low and slashed at the tendons behind his good knee. Vextar's leg gave out, and he crashed to the arena floor. The impact was so hard that cracks appeared in the stone beneath him. Lisa quickly moved away as he tried to grab her from the ground. When he attempted to stand up, his legs wouldn't support him properly. The cuts to his knees had damaged the muscles and tendons that controlled his movement. 15 minutes remaining, called the high priest, but his voice sounded uncertain now. Vextar managed to get to his hands and knees, but he couldn't stand all the way up. His breathing was labored, and green blood was pooling beneath him on the arena floor. "This is impossible," he said, more to himself than to Lisa. "I am the greatest warrior in the Empire. I have never been defeated." Lisa stood about 10 feet away, watching him carefully. Her own body was covered in bruises and cuts, and she was breathing hard. But she was still mobile, still thinking clearly. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" she asked. Vexitar looked up at her with those glowing eyes. "What?" "You assumed that because you were stronger, you were better. But strength without intelligence is just violence, and violence without purpose is just destruction." She began moving closer, her knife ready. "Humans learned a long time ago that the biggest predator isn't always the smartest one, and the smartest one usually wins in the end." Vextar made one last desperate attempt to grab her. All 4 of his arms reached out at once, trying to catch her in a crushing bear hug. But Lisa had been expecting this move for the past 10 minutes. She jumped straight up, higher than Vextar had calculated. His arms closed on empty air beneath her, and as she came down, she landed on his back again. This time she drove her knife toward the base of his neck, where she had seen the biggest gap in his armor plating. The blade went in deep. Vextar's entire body went rigid, then collapsed forward onto the arena floor. His forearms twitched. Once, then went still. The arena was completely silent. Lisa stood up slowly, her knife still in her hand. Green blood covered her arms and face. She looked around at the thousands of alien spectators, all of them staring at her in complete shock. In the center of the arena, next to Vextar's motionless form, was a tall pole with a banner hanging from it. The banner was deep red with gold, symbols, and Lisa realized it was the battle standard of the Carathian Empire. She walked over to the pole and looked down at Vextar. The alien champion was still breathing, but barely. The knife wound had damaged his nervous system, paralyzing him but not killing him. Lisa knelt down and checked his pulse. It was weak, but steady. Then she did something that surprised everyone. In the arena, including herself, she used her emergency medical supplies to stop the bleeding from his neck wound. "Why?" Vextar whispered, his voice barely audible. "Because I'm not like you," Lisa said as she worked to save his life. I don't kill unless I have to. When she was finished treating his wounds, Lisa stood up and walked to the battle standard. She grasped the pole with both hands and pulled it out of its mount in the arena floor. The banner of the Carathian Empire was heavy, but Lisa lifted it high above her head. As she held it up for all to see, her voice carried clearly across the silent arena. I claim this victory for humanity, she called out. Not for conquest, but for survival. Your champion fought with courage, and he will live. But remember this day. Lisa stood in the center of the arena, holding the Carathian battle standard high above her head. The heavy banner caught the light from the ceiling, and its gold symbols seemed to glow. Around her, 10,000 alien spectators sat in complete silence, staring at the impossible sight of a human holding their sacred war flag. At her feet, Vextar lay motionless but breathing. The emergency medical patches Lisa had applied were already stopping the bleeding from his wounds. His eyes were open, and he was watching her with an expression that might have been respect. High Priest Zexkar descended from his platform above the arena. His metallic robes rustled as he walked, and his face showed emotions that Lisa couldn't read. Behind him came war leader Kethmor and several other high-ranking Carathians. The combat is concluded, announced the High Priest in a voice that carried throughout the arena. By the ancient laws of our people, the human champion has achieved victory. The crowd remained silent. Lisa could feel thousands of eyes watching her every movement. She lowered the banner but kept it firmly in her grip. What happens now? She asked. High Priest Zexkar approached until he was standing just a few feet away. Up close, Lisa could see that his smooth, metallic skin was actually covered in tiny scales that reflected the light. Now we must honor the sacred agreement, he said. The Carathian Empire will withdraw from human space. Your colonies will remain untouched. Your people will be recognized as equals under the ancient laws. War leader Kethmor stepped forward, his four arms crossed over his chest in what Lisa realized was a gesture of respect. I have never seen combat like this. You fought with intelligence instead of strength. It was, educational. Lisa looked around at all the alien faces watching her. Some looked angry, others seemed confused, but many appeared genuinely curious about what she would do next. I have a question, she said. In 300 years of challenges, what happened to the bodies of the defeated champions? The High Priest's expression grew somber. They were honored with proper burial rites, and their names were recorded in the Hall of Fallen Warriors. Even in defeat, courage deserves respect. Good, Lisa said, because Vextar isn't defeated. He's injured, but he fought with honor. When he recovers, I want him to keep his title. This caused a stir among the Carathian leaders. They began speaking to each other in their own language, which sounded like rocks grinding together mixed with musical tones. Finally, Kethmor spoke. This is not possible. The champion who loses a sacred challenge can never fight again. It is the law. Then change the law, Lisa said simply. You have the power to do that, don't you? High Priest Zexkar tilted his head, studying her. Why would you ask this? Vextar was your enemy. He would have killed you without hesitation. Lisa looked down at the wounded alien warrior. Vextar was listening to every word, though he couldn't move or speak. He was doing his job, she said. Just like I was doing mine. The war is over now. There's no reason for more hatred. She turned back to the High Priest. Besides, I learned something important during this fight. Vextar isn't just strong and fast, he's intelligent. He adapted to my tactics faster than I expected. With the right training, he could become an even better warrior. What kind of training? Asked Kethmor. Lisa smiled. Human training. We could teach him how to think like a human fighter, how to use strategy and flexibility instead of just relying on strength. The Carathian leaders looked shocked by this suggestion. They spoke among themselves again, their voices rising and falling in complex patterns. While they talked, Lisa walked over to where Vextar lay. She knelt down beside him and spoke quietly so only he could hear. Can you understand me? She asked. Vextar's eyes moved slightly, indicating yes. Good. I want you to know something. You're the toughest opponent I've ever faced. If you had fought a little smarter, you would have won. She paused, making sure he was listening. When you recover, and you will recover, I want you to think about what happened here. Not the losing part, but the learning part. You adapted during our fight. You started figuring out my patterns. That's intelligence, not just instinct. Vexitar's mouth moved slightly, like he was trying to speak. Don't try to talk yet, Lisa said. Just listen. Humans and Carathians don't have to be enemies. We could be allies. We could learn from each other. You could teach us about strength and honor. We could teach you about strategy and adaptation. High Priest Zexkar approached them. The council has decided Vextar will retain his title, but only if he agrees to the human suggestion of combined training. This is unprecedented, but these are unprecedented times. Lisa stood up and faced the High Priest. There's something else. I want to make a proposal to your council. Speak. Lisa raised the battle standard again, but this time she held it differently, like she was offering it rather than claiming it. I don't want to keep this banner as a trophy. I want to return it to you, but I want it to mean something new. The crowd was listening intently now. Even the Carathians who didn't speak English seemed to understand that something important was happening. This banner has been a symbol of conquest for 300 years, Lisa continued. It has been carried into battle against dozens of species. It represents the idea that the strong should rule the weak. She walked to the center of the arena, where everyone could see her clearly. I want it to represent something different now. I want it to be a symbol of cooperation, of different species working together instead of fighting each other. High Priest Zexkar's eyes widened. You wish to change the meaning of our most sacred war banner? I wish to give it a new purpose, Lisa said. The Carathian Empire is strong and honorable. Humanity is adaptable and innovative. Together, we could accomplish things that neither of us could do alone. She held out the banner toward the High Priest. Take this back, but let it stand for partnership instead of domination. Let it remind your people that true strength comes from unity, not conquest. The High Priest looked at the banner, then at Lisa, then at the thousands of spectators watching from the stands. Finally, he reached out and took the pole from her hands. This decision is too important for me to make alone, he said. It must be approved by the full Imperial Council. I understand, Lisa said, but while you're deciding, I have another suggestion. What is that? Lisa gestured toward Vextar. Let me take him back to human space for medical treatment. Our doctors might be able to help him recover faster. And while he's healing, we can start working on that combined training program. War leader Kethmore looked suspicious. You want to take our greatest champion to your territory? How do we know you won't hold him prisoner? Because I give you my word as a soldier, Lisa said simply, and because prisoners don't make good teachers. The Carathian leaders spoke among themselves again. This conversation went on for several minutes and involved a lot of gesturing with their multiple arms. Finally, High Priest Zexkar turned back to Lisa. The council will consider all of your proposals. In the meantime, Vextar will be treated by our own medical staff aboard this ship. If he agrees to your training program when he recovers, we will discuss the details. Lisa nodded. That's fair. The High Priest raised the battle standard above his head. By the ancient laws, I declare this challenge concluded. The human champion has proven her worth and the worth of her species. The Carathian Empire recognizes humanity as equals and allies. The crowd finally broke their silence. The sound they made was different from their earlier cheering. It was deeper, more respectful, like a formal acknowledgement rather than entertainment. Lisa felt a hand touch her shoulder. She turned to see Admiral Morrison and Commander Rodriguez walking toward her across the arena. They had been allowed aboard the Carathian ship to witness the conclusion of the challenge. Lisa, said Admiral Morrison, his voice thick with emotion. You did it, you actually did it. We all did it, Lisa replied. This was never about one person beating another person. This was about proving that humans deserve a place in the galaxy. Commander Rodriguez was looking around at all the aliens watching them. What happens now? Do we just go back to our ships and pretend this never happened? Lisa looked up at the banner in the High Priest's hands. No. Now we figure out how to build something better than what we had before. She turned to address the crowd one final time. People of the Carathian Empire, my name is Lisa Grant. I am a captain in the Earth Defense Force, and I am honored to have fought your champion. But more than that, I am honored to call you allies. The sound that rose from the crowd was like nothing Lisa had ever heard. It was the voice of an entire civilization acknowledging a new reality. The age of conquest was ending, and the age of cooperation was about to begin. As they walked out of the arena together, Admiral Morrison asked quietly, "Do you really think this will work? Humans and Carathians working together?" Lisa looked back at Vextar, who was being carefully moved to a medical stretcher. Despite his injuries, the alien warrior managed to raise one arm in what might have been a salute. "Admiral," she said, "6 months ago, who would have believed that a human could defeat a Carathian champion in single combat?" Morrison smiled. "Point taken. Besides," Lisa added, "we've got something they've never had before." "What's that?" Lisa grinned. "A really good reason to succeed.